Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, the live show number 237, coming from a cool but sunny New York City. Hey, Stephanie Smith. Thank you for joining as a co-host, since I'm in desperate need of co-hosting this today. Stephanie stepped out. See, I was too soon in saying hi. But welcome, everyone. For those that have not joined for us before, President, having you come in. Hey, Stephanie, how are you this morning? She's a little frozen. Anyways, thank you, everyone, for attending.
Can you hear me now?
I got you now. Hey, Stephanie, how are you? Oh, you got that scrunchy face like you can't hear me. I can hear you, though. Can you hear me? No. We'll have to chat each other.
Hey.
There you are. Hey, how are you?
Now. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Thank you for joining. As you know, I'm in dire straits of needing co-hosting this today because I have to take off to the airport. Wonderful JFK. I'm going to go peek around the TWA hotel for a first time, see what it looks like since I got to see the condo. Hey, Mr. Tim Peter. How are you today?
I am delightful. It is a little slice of heaven.
Wait a minute. Where are you?
I'm home. I'm in New Jersey. I'm in beautiful downtown Long Valley, New Jersey.
Okay, so we're getting kind of the same weather. I'm in wonderful downtown New York City at the 48 Lex. So
yeah, you're going to be a little bit warmer than I am. But
yeah.
Otherwise, we tend to be about 5 to 7 degrees cooler than the.
Oh, okay.
Mine?
Oh,
Stephanie, mine?
I think your microphone's distant or something.
It's attached to my head. I don't know how to make it closer.
No. It doesn't sound like it's coming from there, but no, it's all the same. But thank you for making it. Actually, Robert really did a pretty cool list, and I'm here in New York because Pegasus and Travel Tripper, as you know, came together. And we got the big reveal as to what the new Pegasus's functionality is supposed to be like.
You can hear me now, right?
It's still the same, but we can hear you. But it just seems weird that the microphone seems to be coming from your computer.
I suspect it's using this microphone.
Ooh, look at that.
Okay, how about if I do that?
Wow.
That's much better.
Wow.
Okay. I don't know why it's not using this microphone. Everything says it's using this, but apparently it's using that.
Welcome, James Earl Jones. Dang.
I was going more for a Barry White kind of thing. Right on.
Hey, Mr. Robert Cole, how are you this morning?
Doing well.
I'm going to see if Mr. Dan Waxman joins us. If he acts like he's in Hawaii, he's lying.
Oh, really? Oh.
He is in cool and chilly but sunny New York City. Yes, we had to spend the past couple of days together. It's been a lot of fun. Although I think he stayed at the bar a little bit longer than most last night. So
good for him.
Good for him.
Good for him to stay right.
Was he at the bar or under the bar?
At the time I left him, I think we had stapled his cuffs to the bar, so I think he was going to stay upright for a while. But no, he was he was more than fine. He's actually here. He may not say it enough. He's bringing his son around to all the music conservatories around in the Northeast.
His son is a very good musician.
Very talented, yes. And so they have quite the agenda of 8 colleges in 5 days or something. It's like, good God, man. That's going to be painfully fun.
And it's nice to have those options.
I should ask if he's visiting my alma mater. William Patterson University has a pretty good music program. It's not as good as Juilliard, obviously. It's not as good as Berkeley in Boston, but not as good as the New England Conservatory. But if their jazz program in particular is really, really very good.
Yeah, I think that's what he's interested in primarily.
He's a jazz musician. Yep.
I think he is for that. He has quite the agenda for it, but we get to spend a very full day with Pegasus now. Obviously, they're keeping the name Pegasus, and wow, it looks like I'm in automation mode or something. Am I doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Let me turn on off my camera and see if I got a feed issue here.
Frozen.
Yeah. Here, let me do this. That's fine. I'll do that. Anyway, can you still hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'll do that for now, just for bandwidth, because I'm, as usual, using Hollywood hotel Wi-Fi, so you always have those issues of speed and so forth. But anyway,
a sad statement in and of itself.
In and of itself, that's very true. But just as a cap on a little bit of what Dan and I have been doing this past week, it's been kind of interesting to see the integrations of Travel Tripper, which we did like a lot of, and of course Pegasus in their attempt of rebirth.
Right.
Because Pegasus has been very long in the industry and has had its ups and its downs. But Gotham has seemed to see a clear vision to it, and then he's been given the reins to create that. So it's going to be very exciting to see the integrations. And they do have some cool products coming out that I'm not going to take their thunder by any stretch to it, but there's some really cool stuff. And there's a lot of direct channel software platforms that we have mentioned in the show in the past that are going to be in serious trouble when it comes to what gets delivered out to the market and what it actually does.
That's good, because Pegasus formerly core business is no longer Pegasus, right? It's now Disco by Rate Gain.
Right.
Yeah. And that's had its own issues from time to time for several different reasons. But anyway, in the midst of while, Robert, you did a really neat list because, ironically, some of the concerns from the tech world conversations you seem to hit with some of these news articles like OYO and Airbnb.
Oh, well, and I'm always sensitive that I've put so much OYO into it, but OYO is just kind of a fascinating train wreck to observe. So.
Yeah.
Why do you say that, Robert?
I don't know. I think negative operating margins is a start. So.
Well,
expansion at all costs. It's like, we've seen this business model executed by your investors who have actually had you cut a lot of resources recently.
Right.
I don't know.
There's a funny thing I read. I would credit the author if I can remember where I read it. This was like 2 or 3 months ago when Uber was getting some particularly bad press. Or nope, that's a lie. This was about 5 or 6 months ago when Adam Newman at WeWork was getting all kinds of bad press. And one of the smartest things I saw anybody say was everybody's talking about how there's a tech bubble. And they said that is possibly untrue. They said what there undoubtedly is a Softbank bubble. That the number of these companies that have these negative operating margins, whether we're talking about Uber, whether we're talking about WeWork, whether we're talking about OYO, I'm forgetting somebody else obvious.
They've got a bunch in that Vision Fund.
But the Vision Fund, right, exactly, and how many of them are actually funded by SoftBank and potentially overfunded by SoftBank is, not a trivial number, right?
Right.
And they said if you look at all the other tech companies, they're actually kind of in an okay place. But, all the SoftBank funded ones, just a lot of money sloshing around doing some potentially silly things.
And that's a problem. It's a lot of Saudi money. They're desperate to invest it into these businesses, and the strategy of gross expansion, first mover advantage, right? You just get so big, you're losing a ton of money, but all of a sudden you're everywhere, and nobody can then pick you apart. It has
theory.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of worked in some cases. It hasn't necessarily panned out completely for groups like Uber. But again, you wind up running into a situation of these are businesses and they're operating companies. And strategically, you look at Uber and go, yes, it's very nice. It's very large, everything like that. But it's really very much a local business and the local execution. And can you have local businesses who kind of have similar technology? And yes, they innovated with the app and did some amazing things, but can they really do it? Yeah. Do it locally. And the same thing with OYO. Can you have, this highly distributed business? Can it be done better just with small groups locally where you don't need this large international, money suck happening?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I'm going to push back on something you said a moment ago where you said, they've had some success with it. I think they haven't had any success with it relative to their investment levels. Right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right. I mean, fundamentally, I think there's a lot of opportunity to shake up these various industries and bring in new entrants and things along those lines. But, go at 1,000,000 miles per hour, spend $1 gazillion and think that you're going to get a 10x return. It's a perfectly fine model if your investment is not a couple of $1 billion, right?
Well, and most of these tech companies don't want 10x; they want 100x, right?
Correct,
because they'll invest in
1,000
companies, and they're just looking for one.
Of course, well, it's portfolio management, but
exactly. Yeah.
But the point being, getting a 10x return. So I'll tell you a quick little side story. I read a story one time about there's a film studio in Hollywood that makes these low budget, direct to DVD, direct to cable kind of horror movies and things like that. And they're very low budget films. They're I don't know what their budgets are, but they spend $1 million. They spend $2 million. They spend $3 million. Right. And they are extraordinary in Hollywood because they have never lost money on a film in the history of the company. Right?
Yep.
Now, the downside is you never get Endgame. You never get Avengers Endgame out of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
but again, it's very sustainable and things like that.
Yeah, they're playing small ball, right?
They're playing small ball. But the point is, you can also be Disney, but Disney doesn't budget every one of its films at $1 billion either. It's that balance of when everything is this 100x bet at a couple of $1 billion in capitalization. The day you start, that's a tough nut to crack and have the portfolio actually make any sense.
Yeah,
true.
Well,
that's okay. The CEO is being very, very penful and plans on changing his ways.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going to tread. I'm going to tread on dangerous ground here. I'm going to tread on dangerous ground. I've only read I read the article for this one and stuff like that, and I've read some of the stuff about OEO. He certainly doesn't seem like he's the best human being in the world. So I'm not defending him as a human being. The specific article that was shared, some of the stuff that people are perturbed about seem like pretty sound business practices in and of themselves. Like, I don't know that there was much in that article he needs to repent for in that specific article, right?
No. But he does have, in a way, Skift has turned into his pit bull of chasing. They have decided that this is a target in which they're going to pursue and follow, and that they're going to look for these examples. But to your point, the business is, hey, look, if you borrowed money from me, I expect you to pay it back. And
I expect you to pay it back. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a very reasonable thing.
And if you want to control rate, I can't guarantee I'm going to give you your margin. If you're going to make changes I can't control.
Right.
Exactly. So at least in this one specific article, I was like, I worked for the world's largest hotel franchisor. We did things every day that angered some hoteliers, right? We weren't trying to be jerks. We were trying to do what was right for, we had 7,500 franchisees when I worked there. I think they're up to almost 10,000 now. But, on any given day, we were trying to do what was right for 7,000 of them, if not 7,250, if not 7,400. But, sometimes doing things that were a good idea for almost everybody, pissed off the world's fourth or fifth largest hotel brand.
Right.
Because we had 200 hotels angry with us. We weren't trying to piss off those 200 hotels. It was just we were doing what was right for 7,300 of our franchisees.
Well, and I think in OYO's case, it's more
consistently.
It's more do what's better for the entire group, because each of those individual groups are just these little mini, these tiny little grains of sand, right? And they're just going to keep going because they don't really have any control. It's basically you sign up and you go, here are the keys, send me the checks, sort of thing, right? Which
why do you think their expansion? Why do you think the article said their expansion is targeted in U.S. and Japan and not anywhere in India per se?
Well, India they've already owned.
India they own,
right.
Their market penetration is pretty strong there.
In China, they've had very good success, and now they're obviously challenges there. But they want to get into Western Europe and the U.S. to really be legitimized as a global hotel group and not this kind of niche, kind of low end hotel. And I was bullish on them originally because there are a lot of hotels that are, in this kind of very low end that fall off the end of the traditional franchising thing, which may have decent location. They just need a little bit of professional. Here you go. The owners of them just want to get the checks. Yeah. Right. So the model kind of fits nicely. But again, they've got to do a good job. I think they've done a horrible job in terms of the marketing. I mean, maybe it works fine in India, but the differentiation between the townhouses and the OYO hotels, it's very, very generic. I mean, I don't know what font that is, but Yeah, I don't know. They are a complete commodity, but they haven't differentiated their sub brands, which is not a great situation. So,
do you remember the movie Die Hard? Remember the FBI agents that came in?
Do we remember the movie Die Hard? Are you kidding me? I was watching it just before the show started.
Tim's favorite holiday movie.
But remember the FBI agents that come in, Smith and Smith? It's like they seem to know everything. Leave it alone to us. We got the standard. We got the book. We got the book. This is how this is what actually was brought up in conversation. This is how everyone kind of sees OYO as like, we got this, we know this, don't tell us anything we already know everything. And now all of a sudden, they get blown up.
Well, but I mean, again, and I'm going to put Stephanie on the spot here a little bit too, but when you think about large chains, that's kind of what they do, right? Especially when you talk about the low end of the spectrum, the economy tier and things along those lines. Most of those hotel owners, they're smart people. They're hardworking folks. They want to get good, but they don't necessarily have tons of experience running hotels when they first start up, right? So there's a certain amount of training. There's a certain amount of training wheels. There's a certain amount of standards you provide to help them grow their business and turn into, pretty accomplished hoteliers and pretty accomplished, franchisees over time, right? I mean,
but I think there's also
painting with a broad brush.
To your
obviously,
point, there's a progression of ownership. So I think, in terms of managing hotels at different levels and growth patterns. So I think, to your earlier point, the OYO is kind of going after that subset of owners who wants to be either hands off or doesn't have the experience or the expertise or the time. That really doesn't always work with meeting brand standards of some of the other brands in terms of franchising and their rules, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. And to optimize these suboptimal, products out there, going, wait a second, you've got an opportunity. Here's the gap. We can come in with some technology, with some branding, some distribution. That's a good thing. But again, we'll see.
That's even the pitch for the larger brands, and every owner, after they've been in it for a while, starts to see the holes and starts to see the opportunities. Right. But it takes a while for them to see past the facade of what the brand presents. I think the same with OYO, right?
Right. Yeah. So we'll see where they wind up. I mean, I think they also committed the cardinal sin of taking too much funding, and I mean their CEO has a massive investment in it, but it looks like it was some sort of swap debt. I don't know what. Situation where he just didn't come up with that money himself and invest. I think it was kind of like more, the management is invested in this organization. So he has
a lot of private Indian investors. I know that's a very popular thing. Like they have funds that they want to, and with your families and whatnot. It's a very popular business model within that community.
Yeah, but Softbank, I think there are still lots of down rounds ahead of them, which is never a good situation for a startup. So we'll just have to see. Softbank just has to. They're rationalizing their portfolio and trying to figure this out because again, I think it's Vision Fund 2, which was their big plan. Just might not. I'm not sure if it's actually out or not, but that just may not ever.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, you said a moment ago you were bullish on OYO initially. I'm bullish on and I think this is what you're saying. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think we're saying the same thing here, which is I'm bullish on the concept. I don't know if I'm bullish on the current CEO, right? And I'm certainly not bullish on Softbank making back its investment or returning what it expects from the standpoint. But is OYO potentially a successful company as a service provider to hotel owners and things like that? Sure, as long as Softbank doesn't pull all its money out, right?
Right, and that is what's happening. They laid off, I think, 10% of their staff or something like that. So
I know one of the GMs that got laid off, and he was so complimentary of the experience and just the way of doing things. He was, he's still happy at the end of the day that he got the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it's all execution. Lauren, I'm not sure what you're doing there with your
making a latte.
With my what?
Lauren, are you making a latte?
Oh, in the background. Yeah, I'm in the here. I'm going to mute if that's the case. I think background noise. Sorry.
It sounds like you're some sort of hyper-focused, some sort of microphone on a mosquito.
Yeah, but they're Stephanie and I could probably have a healthy debate about this. I think there are a lot of hotels who can use what brands bring to them, and I think there are a lot of hotels who can't. And I think it's a question of OYO has stepped in for a group of hotels who haven't been supported particularly well for a long time, and so there's probably a business to be had there. Whether or not it will pay back SoftBank's investment is another question.
Right. Well, yeah.
So I'm bullish on the concept, but again, I don't know that OYO in its current structure, with its current leadership, et cetera, is and with its current funding model is necessarily going to, turn into what SoftBank kind of hoped it would be when they first funded it.
And its current churn is the other thing. That 16% churn that's not good. When you're starting up and trying to get scale, you want to count on all the folks you just spent that effort and time signing up sticking with you. Because if they keep dropping off, you aren't
not very efficient.
Not gaining altitude.
Right, exactly.
So they seem to be gaining. I mean, and some of the numbers of how many they had in the U.S. are pretty staggering in terms of the the growth. Yeah, so it's possible to go contract these, but if they can hang on to them, I think again for a lot of these hotels, if they play it right, they have whatever term contract with OYO as long as it's not too long. And again, I think in many of these, when they're doing FF&E and things like that, it's a long term. You've kind of sold your soul to them, and you're locked in. So that's a little bit tricky, but you could kind of go, well, is this a stepping stone to get to something else? But I don't think the contracts. I think they were smart enough to figure that out and say, no, we're putting in this money, we're locked in, and you can't just dump us after we put this in and then go somewhere else.
And what's the average franchise agreement term length versus a normal brand? And I honestly don't know that off the top.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it was referred to lightly in the contract that there was a 30-day out functionality, but again, what was the terms of that 30-day availability, and also to what the capitalization that they put into it, those terms as well.
Give back your money, give back pay us for the technology you can't use ever again. Yeah, who knows what it could be. So, So I mean, that'd be if I was writing those. They'd have terms like that. It's like you signed up, you're in. So
right.
Well, but that's a double-edged sword.
But they do have a churn. They do have this churn. So I don't know. People may dropping out.
But I want to point out, that the very lengthy agreement when you're at this tier of the market isn't necessarily in your best interest to have them for 20 years either, right? Because they can take a turn in the opposite direction too, and you can't throw them out as easily as you might like,
Well, you have some brand standards, so you can. I wouldn't say you go for necessarily a long term, but all of a sudden there are kind of financial issues if they decide to opt out, then they're on the hook first.
Again, speaking from past experience on this, moving properties off the ranks is sometimes not the simplest thing in the world. That can take a lot longer than you'd think, even with financial things, and even with failure to meet brand standards, and on and on and on. It can take a while and is a very expensive process. It's a very expensive process, even in the best of circumstances, right?
Yeah. And it's always painful.
And it's always painful. And if you're public, you got to replace the rooms when you go to the street at the end of the quarter. Right. So, I mean, right? There's work. It is not a trivial thing from that perspective.
Yeah.
I don't envy them that part of the process.
Before I'm probably going to leave in the next 5 or so minutes, but I wanted to add a couple more things. I mean, I wanted to save some of the ones. I think Lily's supposed to join a little bit later, and she has some interest in a couple of the articles.
Oh, she had. Which were the two that we need?
4 and 5. 4 and 5.
I thought it was 3 and 5.
Were the 3 and 5? Oh, 3 and 5. Sorry.
Oh, the smart design of hotels to draw guests off season. Yeah, that's a good one. And should you use an online travel agency for your next?
Yeah, I did like that article. I thought
so. We'll stay on the sideline. For
but the one thing I wanted to point out was following up on the discussion with Pegasus and the Travel Tripper and so forth, it's kind of interesting to see that it looks like Travel Tripper is kind of from within changing Pegasus. Yeah, kind of like the Matrix.
Absolutely.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
They're going to be transforming it.
That was the purpose. And they have very good backing in terms of, they've got some A-tier venture folks behind them too.
And they were in the room, which I thought was very surprising.
Lauren, you may remember we had this conversation when the transaction went down about, who bought whom. And I mean, Travel Tripper bought Pegasus.
Yeah, well, that was an acqui-hire, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Because they acquired the technology, they acquired the team, and Travel Tripper was doing great. I mean, they got the Caesars deal, and I think we had talked about that. Whenever that happened, which was a couple,
almost 18 months ago.
And we did kind of say that, at the time, that's a huge deal. And if they can pull that off, I mean, they were punching way above their weight class on that. But if they pulled that off, that would, really set them up for success. And there you go. Here comes, I
met some of their engineers and so forth, and really, there's a real sharp team there. And I think some of what they're going to be doing, but I've really found it very interesting, just to share upon a couple of things, was they're very focused on reporting and data acquisition.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But in a proper way, not in the we're just going to scale the data as we integrate with things, but rather using the data to better refine the process openly with the GDPR considerations, CCP2, those considerations. And I thought that was very welcoming to hear their complete awareness of the value proposition from the guest perspective, value relationship, data. So I have to give them kudos. I was impressed with what they said to that degree, that and if these tools come to market the way they're describing them, there's going to be a lot of very disruptive things going to be happening to some of these other platforms that have been kind of skating along, taking the data at will and taking credit for it. So
sure. No, that's great. Well, if we can talk about the GDPR CCPA thing for half a second, you have to be. There was a huge news story this week that was outside the travel industry. But if people miss this, you really want to know about it. Hitwise shut down this week. For anybody who knows Hitwise has been around for 24 years. I used to be a customer. Hitwise provided panel data primarily to e-commerce sites, but they actually had a travel vertical, and I know we used them when I was at Ascendant. I know that Hilton used them at the time. I think Marriott used them at the time.
Everybody, they were huge.
They were huge, and they were great, competitive benchmarking tool and things along those lines. But they shut down the other day because, and they called it an unexpected turn of events, because about 6 months ago, they started incorporating data from Jumpshot.
Right.
Which, if you've heard about Jumpshot.
Oh, Jumpshot was the one who took down.
Right. So Jumpshot was, collecting data pretty aggressively in violation of GDPR and the like. And enough.
Well, no, the challenge with Jumpshot was, and again, we talked about it on the show.
Hi, Stuart.
Hello. Hi, Stuart. Maybe 3 years ago, Jumpshot was getting all their data from, they were acquired by Avast. But
that's correct.
They were working with an antivirus thing, so they had incredible data. They had the full URL string. They had the full session data. And again, they were saying, no, we're cleaning all that. Nope, we don't give access to it, but it's kind of one of those, as long as you're doing what you're saying you're doing, I guess that would be okay, but there's a problem. We don't trust you. We can't trust you. That's not the law now. And so you're gone. So Jumpshot's gone. I had no idea that they took down, that's what took down.
That's what took down Hitwise. So the point being, and this is really the point, the point being, we've had in the last 4 months, 2 pretty significant analytics vendors gone, out of business, shut their doors, closed, because they're using data in a way that they're not allowed to. Like, they shut themselves down before the government did it to them, right? Because they know that they're going to get slammed with heavy penalties and heavy fees and heavy fines and things along those lines. So anybody who thinks that this is, you can kind of skate by, or that this is, not going to be a big deal. I think these are canaries in the coal mine. I think these are very much canaries in the coal mine, and that we're going to see more and more, where privacy is going to play a more prominent role until, the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction, right? Now, will there be some equilibrium somewhere along the way? Sure. But I think the pendulum had swung way too far in one direction. It is now swinging way far in the opposite direction. It's going to take a little bit of time before it finds, that equilibrium in the middle.
Well, and Rand Fishkin, it was interesting, came out, Narco, I think we had it last week on the list. We didn't talk about it on the show, but he basically said this whole Jumpshot, that's going to destroy marketing and online marketing. This is a huge setback. I think so too. Yeah, I don't say that very often, but yeah, I think that was. So you've got to protect privacy, and you've got to work within some. The playpen's there for a reason.
Correct. And the reason I feel pretty confident about this one, I think everybody on the show knows I'm an advisor to a company that focuses on building personalization systems, primarily using anonymous behavioral data. So this is truly anonymized data and things along those lines. The CEO there actually talks to Rand pretty regularly and things like that. And they're having a pretty healthy debate about this. We're actually all going to be out at Martech West in April, talking about some of this stuff. But where Rand is correct, and where I think people need to be conscious is that you need to be careful that you don't get caught up, that you're not doing anything, even if you're doing everything kind of right, you could still get caught up in backlash against things that are okay right now as the public opinion turns on this and people start to say, wait, you're doing what with the data? Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of folks who don't understand how data is being used, and it's been misused for a very, very, very long time. Right. It's been badly used and misused and abused and the like. So, there's going to be some backlash here, and some companies are going to get hurt because of it. And you want to make sure you're doing everything as clean as you possibly can, because you don't want to be one of them. So on that level, I do think Rand is correct that you want to make sure not only are you acting clean, you want to make sure you are acting as clean as the driven snow, and make sure everybody's aware that you're as clean as the driven snow. Because you don't have to necessarily be evil to have bad things happen to you in this if people don't understand that you're not evil. First rule of marketing, if you're defending yourself, right, you've already lost the conversation.
Speaking of
abuse, speaking of abused over a long period of time, Dan Waxman has joined us. Dan gets abused quite a bit when he's not on the show because of a time zone deficiency.
I prefer to call it laziness. He just doesn't want to get up.
Well, yeah, exactly. 4 a.m. Why isn't he up in Hawaii?
Welcome, Dan.
And welcome, Lily.
And Lily.
We don't have audio for you, Dan.
Dan,
that's okay. We can brush up on our lip reading.
But speaking of that, I just saw yesterday MGM had a data breach yesterday.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't. The data breach wasn't yesterday. It was like a year and a half ago.
Somebody sat on it for that long.
Yeah, and they kind of said, "Oh, yeah, they got a little bit of data, and don't worry, there are no credit card numbers or anything." And yeah, not so good. A big breach. And
I'm wondering how they're going to handle that, because when Marriott did it, they gave you an opportunity to connect to the service and see if your data was part of the data breach. And that
was easy because Marriott's was so massive. It was just just say yes, because it's probably in there. So yeah. The challenge with the MGM, I mean, it was 10 million records. I think what was Marriott's was a huge number. It was like 500 million records or something.
Basically, the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much.
But again, what I think with Marriott, it's coming out that was actually targeted by, I believe, Chinese hackers. So they're saying that a lot of these hacking groups are focusing on the hospitality industry because they're trying to collect information on individuals and what they're doing, and it may not be. It's not necessarily to get their credit card number to steal money from them, right? So it's a little bit of different approach. It's more like gathering personal identity information.
It's to aid their presidential campaign.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes, which I guess that's why they lost in the CIA. But hey, I'm going to try a technical thing right now. I'm going to try to unplug myself. Robert, I have a crash kit email I'm going to send you. That if
crash kit.
Well, what it's going to do is if this shuts off the show, I mean, obviously you hit start again and hit record again if it shuts off. But if it does crash the show, I'm just send me a quick email that says, "Hey, the show went completely down. We can't get it started again." I'll send you my credentials to log in as me and restart it as the host. We've never done this before, so it's going to be I'm going to hit the close button and go from there. All right.
Fingers crossed.
I feel like
okay.
Fingers crossed that Schroeder's cat still lives. All right.
I'm preparing for the intercardiac injection. Okay.
I2K all over again.
Bye.
And we're live.
Right here.
Success.
There we go.
Wow, that's unbelievable. There we go.
I hope that's not the same cavalier approach that Lauren takes to testing on his clients' websites.
That's pretty much it. I think that is his standard approach.
Yeah.
So. Damn the torpedoes. We're going live.
It may take you down for a few weeks, but no, we'll try.
Yeah, but it'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
It's supposed to work. Yeah.
All right. So what's our next topic?
Oh, Lily's here, so we can up, and here's Dan trying to. Let's see if we get.
Hey,
we can hear you.
Yay!
I sound much better in silence, so you guys it's totally a good thing.
You know, there was a big pop hit in the '90s that I always thought was really funny. That went, "You said it best when you say nothing at all," right? You say it best. You remember that song?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great song. It's a beautiful song, but
I love it.
I love the song. It's actually very meaningful to my wife and I. We really like the song a lot. At the same time, if you really think about the lyrics, they're saying, "Boy, I like you so much better when you shut up."
That's why your wife likes the song so much.
We need to license it as a theme. We need a theme song.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Stuart.
This reminds me of that old Schaefer beer commercial. Schaefer beer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one. So
exactly right.
If you're going to get stinking drunk, that's the right beer to have. If you're just having one, go with a different beer. You know.
Exactly. But if you're looking for a case,
more than one. That's right.
So Lily had a couple favorite articles that she wanted us to hold for her to come on the show. So maybe we should talk about a couple of those.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
So, Lily.
So the first one was how hotels use smart design to draw guests off season. So this was number 3 in the list there.
And I included on the list because we're trying to up the level of the show. It was an article from Architectural Digest. So
yes.
Trying to make.
And it's, maybe it's telling that Architectural Digest is talking about this and not hoteliers, but that's a topic for another day.
Ooh.
So actually, I think that this is absolutely phenomenal. I've been kind of keeping an eye on what Gwen Hotel has been doing. Hotel Zachary is doing something similar in Chicago. There's a lot of really unique ways that people are drawing guests in the off season. And I think this came up. I was on a panel yesterday, actually with Holly, as well as one of Bob Roush's daughters. I always get their names mixed up. I think it was Melissa. They both start with M. Meredith. And we were talking about kind of what the roles should be between sales, marketing, and revenue, as one does. And I was kind of making the point that revenue managers often have to deal with whatever demand has already come into the local area. Unfortunately, we don't have that magic wand. We can't steal share from 2 states over in most cases, unless it's a really unique property that actually has a multi-state comp set. But the tools.
So you focus on 2 states or 2 streets over. Yeah,
2 streets over, right? Yeah. But the tools at our disposal are mostly price and packaging and things like that. And they're never even going to see what we put out there unless marketing is working with us to bring eyes to those offers. So I really liked the concepts that they were putting in here. I also loved the igloos, really kind of capitalizing on Instagram-worthy spaces and things like that. And when Michael Nenner was saying that there's a waiting list for some of these amenities in a season where they would otherwise be completely dead because people just don't go to this area in the winter typically, it's just a really smart tapping into generating demand where there is none by differentiating yourself through design, through service, and through something unique, because people are looking for unique experiences. So this is like, I probably would have made this the Boop article if it was my list, to be completely honest, because I'm like, finally somebody gets it and they're doing it right. So I think it's really worth talking about, and really for our listeners to take back and say, okay, it's low season for you, whatever that may be. What is it that you can do that's unique, that's going to create some buzz and get guests, even the local people who are already dealing with whatever weather there is locally, to come and spend more time with you?
Well, and if I can add one point to that, Lily, in addition to building buzz, first of all, I agree with you completely. This is a phenomenal article. In addition to building buzz, build revenue, right? Right. And obviously you care about that, so I'm not suggesting you don't. But the people use the word differentiation wrong a lot from my perspective. And I have to give credit to my friend Mike Moran, who was the first person I ever heard say this. He said differentiation is not what makes you different. Differentiation is a difference people are willing to pay for. Mm-hmm. So, you should be differentiating in a way that sets you apart and actually lets you charge a premium or charge, even if it's a premium relative to low market low season in market prices and the like. What sets you apart that somebody's like, wow, I really want to do that. And it's just, this is just so smart. And there's a little bit of hotel marketing 101 on this, of selling the destination first too, why would you want to come here in the first place when it's a crappy time of year? Well, there could be all kinds of reasons, right?
Right.
And I think it's, it does go hand in hand, because the design is great, but without marketing and or PR involved in this, if I were to just create a package that said rooftop igloos, nobody would know what was going on. And that's not why they're looking at me in the first place, because they came for a different reason. So I think it's just a really smart way to connect with a new audience that you wouldn't have otherwise maybe captured. And it's a great example of marketing and revenue management working together.
And there are lots of ways to do it, though, because food and beverage options, visiting chefs, even you look at hotels doing, they'll do holiday villages, gingerbread villages, these massive displays or something, but they may tie it into a brunch or a dinner or a children's thing, or a really authentic Santa or something who's been there, something that creates value in that differentiation. I would say it's not just it's generating revenue, but it's creating value in the mind of that individual, where it's hey, that's different. I want to do that. That's going to be a great experience. There are endless opportunities for it, and it's sad when the hotel industry does down season. Let's just par everything back and see how we can get minimum staff, shut off as many rooms as possible, and just be on life support for the next 90 days is not great. So
kind of interesting what Resort Pass is doing. They're trying to bring people into the property who may not be staying, and I think that's causing a lot of the people who are starting to use it to step up their game and make things really cooler there to drive people in. And I think that could potentially, you bring in the external people who are not necessarily staying, creates a buzz around the property and maybe brings people in as well. And it forces them to create new things that are more interesting than just, the room and whatever they have. Like you said, things like the cabanas and chefs and all sorts of things that they can do.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking to someone that came from the food and beverage side to the hotel side, and they were talking a lot about the strategy they learned probably later than they should have was don't build the experience for potential guests in the restaurant side, build it for locals. Because if you can create something that locals are going to come and buzz about, that's the authentic experience that the guests want. And I think off season, there's an opportunity to do a little more of that, right? Especially if you have some kind of footprint, which is a shared space. But one of the things we're talking a lot about with our clients right now is I've got a new favorite phrase, and this is one of the first favorite phrases that didn't come from Tim, because all his phrases are awesome. But I got it from a Star Wars podcast. But we've been talking a lot about...
Imagine that.
And it's not Force related, but it sort of is. But,
it's Sith related then.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Actually, in the upcoming Navigate conference, I'm going to use a quote from Qui-Gon Jinn, which relates to this, which he talks about be mindful of the present, and your focus determines your reality. In with hotel marketers, what you find is their focus is in the wrong spot some of the time. And so if you want something like off-season to be driving more revenue, then you have to allocate the appropriate amount of time and resources to it. So the phrase we started using is where focus goes, energy flows, which basically means when you put focus on something, more energy is going to go towards it, which means more results are going to come from it. So, spending time to really think through what can we do, not just to check a box, but to actually have an impact on our business in the off season. And I just did a shameless plug in the live chat, and we did an episode 125 of the podcast. We talked about this topic of driving business in the off season from a marketing perspective. So I think it kind of parlays with what we're talking about. But you got to put the energy in to get the output.
Yeah.
And you got to ask the owner for the CapEx investment to make a skating rink and build igloos. I mean,
yeah.
So there's. Can't hear you, Lily.
Lily, you're muted.
Sorry, I hit my mute button by accident. But I think it's not just that; it's also instead of following up, what can we do without really doing it, and just skate by and make it seem like let's put up something really cheap that sort of reminds people of what's happening at Gurney's. Please don't do that. Yeah. Do it right.
Again, is that a difference somebody will pay for?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Oh yeah, the ones that I currently loathe are the backdrop, where it's kind of like the Instagrammable back, and you're like, it's a backdrop.
Right.
Oh, you hate that, Robert, but Instagram crazy millennials.
But it's the opposite of the authenticity and everything.
I agree. But I will say that for people who don't have a CapEx, to be able to put in a skating rink, even though, if you could show an ROI for it, hopefully you can free up the money, whatever. But if you can't do anything else and you can at least direct people towards Instagram-worthy areas of your property, it's still helpful. But I agree, if it's like a backdrop of Paris and you're in the middle of Kansas, that's probably not going to count as an authentic item.
I'm launching a new brand. It's called Green Screen Hotels.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see that a while back? There's actually a company that will Photoshop you into various places around the world to make it appear that you traveled there when you really haven't.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Can they figure out the geotagging though, where they can really get that's the key, right?
The other thing I would say about this, with the trying to create an experience in the off season or a reason for people to visit, if you look at a lot of destinations that have over time, if they're traditionally more summer destination, but they try to create a winter experience, a lot of times it takes them a while to get to a critical mass point. So you've got to persevere with this stuff and maybe incrementally invest over years. So there are destinations that have done a really good job creating a massive light show experience that now draws millions of people. But year one, if you'd went there, you'd be like, meh. But you know what? They invested, whatever they did the first year. Now they've invested double by the second year and triple by the third. And by year 5, you've got something that's really, really impressive. So, though I don't want people to go and do it half-assed and just check a box, have a long-term strategy, but don't give up after a year if it doesn't work, because there's this kind of, you've got to grow some momentum by adding to it each year and improving the experience.
Right. Yeah.
There's a town here in Washington, Leavenworth. It's a little Bavarian town. They do the light show, but they only do it on the weekends, which really helps with their Sunday occupancy specifically. But you went there and the entire light show lasts like 4 minutes and there's thousands of people there and every restaurant has a 4-hour wait, but it's still you got us there. Whatever they did, it worked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh no! When I lived in the Woodlands, the suburb of Houston, they had a thing. It was the lighting of the doves, and it was this bridge with just kind of these 3 kind of lit doves, and that was the big. But it was an event, and it drew thousands of people, and it filled the restaurants. And you kind of looked at it and you went, "Really? That's it? They're basically flipping a light switch on these little cages with twinkle lights on them." Okay, but again, it's how they marketed it, and it for them, they were developing a lot of homes and things like that in the whole area, so it got people out to the area. It filled the restaurants, the business, had them go, "Oh, this is an area," and it was effective. So it's great. Yeah, anything, and those little things can help. So.
Well, and it's funny, you can learn the lesson from a lot of places. This is a slightly off-topic one, but I always think it's interesting. That's why McDonald's serves breakfast. McDonald's didn't used to serve breakfast. They actually started serving breakfast in response to franchisees who said, "I've invested a lot of capital into this equipment, and it sits idle from about 2 a.m. till about 11 a.m. every single day." Yep. And literally, McDonald's introduced breakfast, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, specifically so that they could capitalize on the asset more effectively for the franchisees. So you've got periods that are those, that's your 2 a.m. to 11 a.m., go invent breakfast. Right?
And as the only one old enough on the show, I remember McDonald's before they had Happy Meals and Ronald McDonald, and it was a burger place. I mean, it was just kind of teenagers hanging out, burger joint type thing.
There was no Ronald McDonald.
That's right. That was a late '60s innovation.
And you didn't get a toy.
Sunday or Saturday morning TV.
I only ever go to McDonald's for the Happy Meal.
Exactly. It's the only way he finds joy in his life. I know. So
well, that in this show.
Well, that's,
of course.
Yeah,
but you only find joy in your life about once a month on the show. So,
but before that, I distinctly remember mid-'60s McDonald's in price wars with other drive-in restaurant because they didn't have they had a counter, right? They had the arches, and it was and you just walked up to it, right? There was no interior seating, none of that stuff. So that group, they definitely changed their model multiple times, and genius moves almost each step of the way. But yeah, they were battling on price against these other burger joints, right?
To order and any of that stuff back then? Is it
the what?
The touch screens to order your food? And
Exactly.
I would recommend, if anyone hasn't seen it, the movie The Founder, although I think historically not entirely accurate, it's a very good portrayal of the early days of McDonald's and how it came to be so dominant.
I think McDonald's actually invented the internet, didn't they? That's what I heard.
That was Al Gore.
That was Al Gore.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And Ronald McDonald, not quite known as
actually,
well. Maybe Al Gore. We've never seen Ronald McDonald and Al Gore in the same room at the same time.
Actually, I had a conversation earlier this week with a fellow, John Bruce, who did not invent the internet, but his business partner is Tim Berners-Lee. He's the CEO of Solid, which is a group out of MIT, and had a very interesting conversation with them.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is a guy who did invent the internet.
So moving on to the next topic, Lily, what was the other article?
So if that was my personal boop, this is my personal ruh-roh, which is the Forbes magazine article about why everybody should book on OTAs.
Well, not why you should. It's when you should. Should you use an online travel agent?
They phrase it that way, but if you read through the article, this guy's clearly a fan of booking through the OTA because he says there are some problems, but here's why none of them are actually a problem. And then you get the bullet points, which, let's be honest, everybody just reads the bullet points in articles. Me. So I think that... I actually started to wonder if this was an influencer post put out by Expedia and Booking.com to try and comment on Google.
No. Actually, Chris Elliott, who is he pisses off a lot of people. He truly is a consumer advocate, right? He goes and fights for a lot of consumers when organizations do kind of boneheaded things. He goes to bat for them and writes articles about them and shows up on TV and all over the place.
So writing an article that promotes an unnecessary middleman seems a little counterintuitive if he's promoting consumer.
Right.
Interest.
But
I thought he had a nice
points? I'm curious. I didn't see the bullet points because he may be right because we're our own worst enemies, right?
Well, he pointed out that you have more choices. You have the ability to compare prices, package deals, and independent reviews, which you can't get Booking Direct, which I don't disagree with. But it all started out with Ron Brown pointing out, when he travels, he only uses Expedia and Booking to shop, and then he books directly. So I felt like there was a real opportunity for this to be a balanced article, for him to go back and say, there are some issues. Here's what you get with the OTAs. However, you could direct book at the end and eliminate all of these hassles with the OTAs. Use it like Ron Brown. Use the OTA, but book through the hotel, whatever the case may be. But he did not decide to go that route, which I found very interesting. Instead, he said, here's all the things that are wrong with OTAs, but you can get a package with airfare, so you should probably still use OTAs. So I just thought it was really interesting that he took it in that direction. Obviously, I am biased on the topic because I would prefer for people to book direct, but I was at least glad that the article started out pointing out somebody who uses them as a search engine and then books direct, because honestly, I do the same thing, but it's still good for the hotel.
I also wonder who the audience was. Like, I feel like he was saying, okay, here's someone that's never used the internet before. Let me teach you how.
Right.
Well, I think it's in Forbes as a general consumer article, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for just kind of, whatever. And that's what Chris does, right? I mean, he is kind of the ombudsman for just this vast majority of people, and people send him, I've been wronged with whatever stuff. But I take a little bit of a different approach. I think I'm more in the camp of Dan, where the industry being its own worst enemy. These are some pretty powerful statements that are being made of why you should do that. And when you have a business where folks shop through you but don't convert, which is how you actually make your money, that's a problem. And actually, we were talking about Pegasus earlier. That was a huge issue for them, where people would shop through Pegasus and then book through some other channel, which completely undermined their business model. So then all of a sudden they had to go to these very, very significant, just like a GDS, excess search fees, right? To penalize people to do it, which raised the overall cost, which then made it so a lot of folks couldn't use the platform, right? And it wound up being a detrimental impact on it. So, but I kind of looked at this as hey guys, look at what the OTAs are doing. The hotel industry needs to step up and address some of these things, because the fundamental issue is, how do you shop effectively across brands if you are brand agnostic?
Right.
That's about the brands and everything.
But I think if you look at what Accor is doing, I think if you look at what Marriott is doing, I mean, they're kind of moving in that direction to a certain degree, right?
Absolutely,
to a degree, right?
To a degree.
It's still limited. It's still going to be within their own.
Well, Accor has opened up the platform to a variety of folks to be on, even if it's not necessarily one of their brands in all cases. I mean, they're definitely looking at things that you can do to shop across brands, right?
Yeah. The fast booking stuff hasn't worked out well.
It is not working well at all, because most people who aren't a part of their brand are saying, why would I put my inventory?
Well, it's the same way Roomkey did, right? It was started by the main hotel groups, and the other groups went, I don't like that. The control's not, it's not neutral, right? So,
well, the good news is that we're not going to have to worry about this too long, because Google's going to eat the OTA.
That was exactly my next point. Is like, you say, well, if you want cross-brand shopping, then you should just use MetaSearch, right? And there's Google and do that.
There's no such thing as MetaSearch, Robert. There's only Google.
This is true. and there was a stat that came, I don't know if it was one of your articles or an article from Hotel Marketing. I read it earlier today. I think it came from SimpleView, but it said that Google Travel had like over 270 million visits in the last, whatever the period was, but it was about the same as Expedia and Booking.com combined had site visits. So Google Travel is rapidly becoming, right in front of our eyes, it's going to be the dominant distribution channel for just about every hotel within the next 2 years. And people are oblivious to this.
I shop like Lily. I used to go to the OTAs and then go look at the direct pricing and shop that way. But I've moved to Google.
Yep.
That's true. I guess for me, it depends if I'm location based. So if I need to be near something specific, 100% of the time I use Google. I really don't like booking on Google. I kind of looked through it once before. It doesn't suit me. So I still book through the website direct. But if I don't care in what area of the city I am, then I'm more likely to use something like Expedia because I feel that it's a broader search, whereas Google is a little bit more narrowed down.
So what's interesting is I'm doing a project for a client right now, and I've been reading through Google's annual report and their investor calls and things along those lines. And there's some fascinating stuff in terms of, first of all, Stuart, I completely agree with you. I'm gonna say this a little more boldly. I wrote an article for Hotel News Now last January that basically said they're the 800-pound gorilla. Your 800-pound gorillas are afraid of. They
it's like the 8,000-pound.
Correct, exactly. They're what do you call it? They are, for many hotel companies, when you count for search, when you count organic search, paid search, meta search, they account for anywhere between 40 and 60% of all traffic, and possibly a bigger share of that in terms of revenue. But what's really fascinating is Google's biggest problem is they are a one-product company.
Right. They're very brittle.
They only make money on advertising. That is the only product they have ever successfully made any money on. And what they're starting to see is that search volumes are plateauing on the search engine, right? But what they're starting to do is supplementing the experience on maps in a big way.
Absolutely.
And especially what we're likely to see, and I'm not predicting this, they said it out loud, specifically on YouTube in a big way. So, for instance, Sundar Pichai in their last earnings call said, increasingly we see new verticals beginning to grow as well, supplementing the content you see on YouTube with other types of accessorizing things, be it merchandising, ticket sales, and so on, right? He also said, let's see, Ruth Porritt, who's the CFO, said, it starts with those areas, putting headcount behind the areas we're investing for the long term. We have a couple of additional factors that are somewhat expected to both boost the year-on-year growth, including blah, 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 blah. Sundar Pichai said, on e-commerce, I'm really excited. Bill Reddy is here. He brings a lot of experience. And you mentioned the transactional part of the funnel, and I think that's an area where he brings a lot of experience, given his prior work, improve the overall user experience, and then people are interested in something. How do you make it more seamless to complete the transaction, and bringing in deep partnerships with merchants and retailers to make that happen?
Right.
So get ready for transactional YouTube, right? Get ready for seriously.
Transactional everything, right?
Transactional everything.
They're getting deeper into the value chain of everything, right? And when you look at travel specifically, they've had Googlers at low levels writing blogs about how they use Google tools when they travel, and talking about Google Lens, Google Maps, all these other tools, and kind of tying this all together as, hey, we are part of the journey. And this is all, you look at this, you look at the zero-click stuff that's going on, you look at the advances they've made with the BERT changes related to conversational web. They are trying to dominate everything, and it's gonna come together and culminate with Google Assistant being the definitive tool you use for travel planning and travel experience.
Barring a regulatory, intervention or something along those lines, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah. But which we're beginning to see in Europe, right? There was the letter last week or the week before that 30 different businesses put together saying on the vacation rental space how Google's using an unfair position to corner the vacation rental market because they're using their exposure on search to go vertical and prefer their products than other people's. So it's scary. It's really, really scary.
This is a this is a bullet in the thing that I'm working on right now, and this is still in draft form. But YouTube, and to a lesser but more in the future extent, Maps Assistant and Google CarPlay represent untapped opportunity for continued growth, and more importantly, access to customers at every step of the customer.
They want to be ubiquitous. Every part of your life is going to be.
And Expedia and Booking cannot compete for customers at those same touch points. Right?
They're trying though. I mean, if you look at what their strategy is, right? Like Booking.com just came out with CityBook app during the stay. The announcement of Hilton partnering with BuzzFeed today on the content stuff. It's, they're trying to get further into different parts of not just planning travel, but experiencing travel as well.
And when Booking.com and Expedia merge, they might be in a better position to actually compete with Google.
Yeah. But the scary, so in the short term, hotels are like, great, we're going to eliminate the OTAs. It's like, well, you're going to replace two massive companies with one much, much more massive.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's not a position to be in.
Right. And the thing with Google, and this was actually Microsoft's original strategy when they developed Expedia, because Expedia was one pillar. They had another one called Sidewalk, which was more like events and activities and local, what's going on in the city. I think they were trying to replace like the weekend guide, right? Like what's happening. And that wound up not happening. They wound up divesting of Expedia and everything like that. But on Google, they want to be the absolute, kind of DNA of your life. I mean, in every aspect. So I've got a Pixel phone, I've got a Google Home, and what happens if I go and look at this? You probably can't see it. It might be backwards. It goes at the top. They're little buttons now, right? You can do search, and you can do voice search, which is now like 30 or 40% of their traffic on Maps. But it has work for a commute, right? Restaurants, coffee, hotels. When the hotels one, I find fascinating and kind of puts where it is in Google's priorities, because hotels are an infrequent purchase, right? Compared to coffee or restaurants.
Oh, sure.
And that sort of thing. But they have got it right, right there, taking up screen real estate. And that stuff just doesn't happen, accidentally. Sort of thing. They're either testing that, or they feel there's enough upside and benefit to add it there. So
you're in a good position as a company when literally about 3 million times per minute customers come to you and tell you precisely what it is, what they need. Right. So I think their data on what people care about is, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say probably pretty good.
Yeah. Fair to middling, I'd say.
Fair to middling, right. Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Second only to, since Ed isn't on the show, flip twos. And
I thought you were going to say second only to Bings, but
It's about quality, not quantity.
Exactly.
There was a horrible...
That should be the new tagline for Bing.
Yeah. One of the most brutal disses of Bing was there was a Billie Eilish interview that kind of popped up.
This was hysterical.
Oh man! And they were asking her about something or other. And she goes, "Bing, does it even exist or something? Has anybody used Bing?" With just such disdain and revulsion about the whole platform.
Well, that's sorry, we're getting far afield, but I always loved in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when his Walkman gets destroyed. Star-Lord's Walkman gets destroyed, and the guy gives him a thing, and he goes, "No, this is much better, man. This is, you can listen to all your music. This is what everybody on Earth is using now. It's called a Zune."
Exactly.
We weren't far afield, Tim, until we got to the reference to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, no, I know. I said we're getting far afield. I admit. I fully admit. All right, so get us back on track, Lily. What are we going to talk about next?
Well, we've been talking about Google. I'm curious. I don't necessarily have a fully developed opinion on it, but what do you guys think about the article that talks about Google's vertical search products as opposed to horizontal? Did you get anything from that little snippet there?
Oh, I want to talk about this so much. Go for it. But I want to give other people a chance first. No?
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, fine. So here's the thing. I said before that meta search doesn't exist. There's only Google, right? Mm-hmm. I've been saying this for a long, long, long time. This is why I want to talk about this, because I've been ranting about this forever. Meta search is not a product. It's not a company. Right? It's not a product. It's a feature, right? Vertical search is a feature. If you think about the way Google works, generally speaking, look at how, when you do a search for certain terms today, look at the kind of search result you get, which they call universal search, and how it varies from what you got 5 years ago. When's the last time you saw 10 blue links? Google has done a really extraordinary job of understanding the intent of the searcher and making the search results page mirror the need of the customer at that point. And they're getting better and better at that over time, right? So all the vertical search products are, places where they're doing UI experiments and things along those lines. And certainly appealing to folks who know to go to the vertical search. But over time, those are just features that they're just going to roll into the core search engine when it matches the intent of the searcher. So, I don't think of Google as Google and Google Travel and Google Flights and Google whatever, Google Maps and all that. There's Google, and they're answering the question they get asked with the right response, and vertical search is going to be part of that if it matches the intent of the customer. But it's just a place, it's their playgrounds where they work on, UI and experience and things like that.
Yeah, and they, if you look at their internal structure, some time ago they realigned it so that they have dedicated people working on each of these verticals to understand, one, how can we provide a better experience for the person with this intent, whether that be restaurants or hotels or flights or weather or whatever the vertical is. But the other part is, how do we maximize our revenue from this through all of our products?
Right.
Because it's not just Meta on hotels. They're getting Google ads. Google Hotel ads is part of it, but then they're also monetizing it if they're embedding videos, because people go to YouTube and watch ads. At Google Maps, there's advertising. That everything about it is monetized now, to the point where organic is a slither of what people are actually clicking on from these verticalized search engine results pages.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were talking about the regulation earlier to break up Google or to suppress this. I mean, the line basically comes where, and the differentiation between Apple, right? Because Apple's just shooting out, because Apple's like, hey, we're all about privacy and everything like that, right? They are not an advertising-based business. Right. At all. And that is where Google has really figured out, okay, this is it. Let's organize the world's information and we'll just set that up, and then you can start advertising, because we've got this, where do you want to advertise, right? It's a great strategy. The question really comes in on the whole data sharing type thing and how much information and how you break that up, and that, the privacy versus convenience spectrum, where do you draw that line and how do you legislate that? I don't know. That is very, very difficult. Let's see, Marguerite Vestager, I think is how you pronounce her name, in the EU can figure it out. She's done some great work so far, but I don't know. That's going to be a...
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while before the North America, or specifically the US, does anything about it from a governmental perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you look at Europe, historically, monopolies are scrutinized from a different lens, right? People there look at, is it unfair competition between businesses? And if it is, which I think most people would argue Google is definitely doing things that leverage their position in an unfair way, or don't create freedom to compete. So Europe, I think, is going to have some legislation. But over here, if you look historically, most of the successful monopoly-related lawsuits or regulations that have come in have been because it negatively impacts the consumer. And I think it's hard to articulate an article right now of what Google's doing, that what they're doing is hurting the consumer in the short term. Now, long term, I think certainly there's fear. But right now, Google's creating a better experience, creating more choice, keeping costs low. These are the three main drivers of whether it's impacting consumers in a negative way, and it's just not. So
specifically, and I had a lawyer explain this to me about a year ago, specifically that in Europe, they believe that anything that harms competition is ultimately bad for the customer, period.
Yep.
In the U.S., our entire regulatory regime since the 80s, since the Reagan administration, has been built on the idea that if it does not affect prices that customers pays, then there's no evidence that any harm has come to consumers, right? So that's where our current regulatory structure doesn't allow for this. I just posted a link to Benedict Evans is an investor at Andreessen Horowitz who does he's a really smart guy. He's a partner at a venture capital firm, and he does a presentation every year or so about here's the trends that he's paying attention to. And way deep in this deck, it's like slide 65 or something like that. He goes into a very lengthy bit about what regulation could look like and the problems with it, right? Very much to Robert's point about, slide 66 and on. He goes into a whole thing of, if you're going to regulate it, what do you mean by regulate it? What do you mean by break it up? What do you mean by, whatever? How do you replace it? What do you replace it with? It's not just, break them up. It's what do you do if you do this kind of thing? And it's worth reading to think about, what you think is the right answer. I don't know what the right answer is, honestly. Right. I don't claim to know what the right answer is.
Go work for Google. That's the right answer. Go work for Google.
Well, we kind of do.
Yeah.
We're the product. Exactly.
So
I think Google needs to change its mission statement from organizing the world information to monetizing the
world. That's great.
That's very true.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And I don't know. I think people, you look at travelers and they'll say, I think it would be great to talk to my my Google Assistant, and they'll say, book the trip to New York. Right? Because if it knows your calendar, you're using Gmail, you got Gmail calendar, look through and go, oh yeah, there's a meeting for whatever. Dan, you're there going to 8. You've got a complex trip, right? Because Lauren was saying that you're going to eight schools, for your son. That wasn't easy travel planning, I'm sure. Probably more complex than most people would have to endure. But if you just say, yeah, can you set this up? That would be great, because that's what, when you, again, being the oldest one here, I remember when there were administrative assistants and CEOs would actually say, set that up for me, right? And it just kind of happened, and they had no idea how it happened. It was magic. Right.
So, Bill Fisher travel.
I just have control issues. Yep. I have a live assistant who I still seldom let her book my travel. She books everybody else's, but I like to get my hands on my actual travel. And she knows how to update my calendar. Oh, for sure. She knows how to update my calendar when the revised comes through with no notice to her, which literally happened just last night.
But let me ask you this though: Do you use GPS to navigate to somewhere?
I use Google.
Right. So I bet there was a time when you didn't trust it to do that because you felt like it wasn't good enough, right? And so the trust gap, if Google can close that and it can book the same or better than you would book on your own, then that fear goes away.
I don't know that would happen for me.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen in the next decade, realistically, for travel, that kind of complex travel. But for simple stuff,
I think for me, it's more of a personality flaw than a fault of Google's whatsoever. Because my assistant is also very good at getting my preferences. I don't know what it is about travel. I just have to have my
Lily, have you heard about new Google Therapist?
Probably need that. Yes.
Lily has trust issues. Let's delve into those.
Let's do some therapy today.
No, but again, if you look at the model of the traditional, assistant who handled the travel, right, just like taking care of it, and certainly celebrities have this sort of thing, right, where they're personal managers, assistants. Their job is to deal with this, make it go away. Just, let me do what I'm supposed to do and just get the noise out of the equation. My favorite was many of them in the car rental industry. The CEO, they might have had preferred rates at Hertz and Avis and wherever. They would make 6 rental car reservations for the guy, arriving at 10 o'clock, and he would just walk to the place, and everything was set up, and he could just walk to the car at Hertz, and if there was a reservation at Avis too, because the car rental groups didn't have any penalty for that. So you just go and do it. And you look at that and go, that's genius, right? They eliminated the friction. Not great for the rental car business, but they allow it. So, I mean, it's going to be watch out what works best. And I think the one key with Google, and they did acquire Room 77, which was kind of I don't know if it was an acqui-hire or kind of the tech, but the one thing that Room 77 did, because originally they were saying, oh, we're going to show you the individual room and here's the view out of it. And like that obviously doesn't fit how property management systems work. That failed miserably. But on the other side, they searched for AAA rates and ARP rate, or the senior rates, auto club rates, government rates, which other folks didn't do. They were out there, but they incorporate in there. So I think somewhere in the bowels of Google, they're looking at, oh, you're eligible for a bunch of different rates.
It's kind of like honey.
Which one? And so
shopping.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Exactly. Hey, you didn't know you qualified for this, but we can save you $20. Are you for that? Yeah. And let me tell you, corporate travel planners are all for that. Consumers are all for that. Everybody, and I think that'll be another avenue for them to go. And Expedia is certainly trying to do that, right?
Oddly, coming from a revenue manager, I think that we should be all for it. Honestly, I really do.
That's controversial opinion.
It's very good. I love controversial opinions. You should know this about me by now. But I think that a big problem in our industry is that anytime something happens that might be good for our consumer, Airbnb, we like to just spend all of our time and effort pushing back on it. If you're offering the discount, you intend for people to use it. It's actually going to improve our data if people who are qualified for discounts sign up for them, because we'll know what the actual demand is in that area. And if you don't want them to book that, then you have no business offering it in the first place. I feel the same way about people who put on a Groupon deal and then they treat their Groupon people like crap or opaque or whatever, what have you, because gosh darn it, I offered this and people took advantage of it. And I'm happy when it's a number on my spreadsheet, but I don't want to deal with the actual people behind it. We've got to get away from that as an industry. We need to champion the consumer, because it turns out our industry is called hospitality, which is all about supposedly a consumer focus. So when we are anti something that helps the consumer to have a better experience, how can we still call ourselves the hospitality?
No. There's a name.
It's that mic right now.
Brava.
It's hospitality.
Hospitality. Oh, I've just been mishearing it this whole time.
Exactly. Yes. It's
hide and seek. I was a child and thought it was all rotten potatoes.
Yeah. It ties into all the things as kids. Hide and seek. Looking for your discounts, whack-a-mole, trying to find the right.
I thought revenue managers just gamified the system to make a fun treasure hunt to find the lowest rate.
If we spent half as much effort on differentiating ourselves as we do trying to combat the changing trends of consumer behavior, we'd be a lot further as an industry. Like, we need to just learn how to accept change, promote change, and promote customer-centric ideology.
Hallelujah!
So,
Lily, sorry, go ahead, Stephanie. You've been.
Well, no, I wanted to piggyback on that, on something that I think you hit the nail on the head, and Dan kind of said it earlier, like we're our own worst enemy. But yesterday at the Hotel Revenue Conference, they were talking about how hotels are horrible at being able to book meeting space for meeting planners. There's no distribution platform. Right. There is nothing that you can source or distribute your meeting space platform. And so are the Convenes and Breadths of the world going to take over and be the next Airbnb for meeting space, because we haven't adapted as hoteliers to really adapt to the consumer behavior to make that an easy, bookable, transactionable process.
Last year I was involved in I can't go into a lot of detail on it, but for kind of how do you streamline the group booking process? And there is a way to do it. And the very large group I was working with, unfortunately, picked another very large group who was not the right technology partner, who had severe internal constraints, let's just say. And so their product probably isn't going to work very well, but somebody will crack that code, because it is very, very crackable. But it takes a little bit of work, takes a little bit of some schema revisions, but it's very, very possible to make that work very, very streamlined.
I'm really not sure why it hasn't already happened. I was really hoping that the Breather app would take off a little bit more. I haven't really seen it come out other places much outside of New York, but it was basically along those lines. Hey, I need to have a quick impromptu meeting. I can book a boardroom real quick on the Breather app and show up. And I wish every hotel in the world would adopt that, because there's so much untapped revenue, because it takes them 2 days half of the time just to get back to you about it. Then they're going to charge you $500 whether you stay for an hour or whatever. And if we could do some of those smaller meeting rooms like we do hotel rooms, there's so much revenue to be had there.
Yeah. But most of in the group space, what they wound up doing is just the entire, and groups like social tables could have gone that direction. Very possibly, but wound up getting acquired and kind of done different things. A lot of it winds up now focused on how can they do recurring corporate business, because that's the lowest hanging fruit for them, as they see on their little slide deck goes low hanging fruit. Please don't use that term. but they go, and then they go right at the top will be recurring meetings, and that's what everybody. I mean, Group Eyes had a Group Eyes. I remember Charles, and then they're still out there, fighting a good battle. They got some funding finally, but it was tough because their thing originally was, if it's a soccer team, if it's whatever, anybody can go do these. How do you get? But they never got enough inventory, right, across a broad enough number of destinations to really you've got to get critical mass for it to work, right? But so that's been the problem.
But who's likely to have the inventory?
Oh.
The folks who organize and make available all the world's information.
Yes, yeah. Well, they don't have good group information, and the whole between financial settlement, there are a ton of moving parts, right? RFP process and contracting and rooming lists and settlement processes, all sorts of friction points. But you kind of look at that and go, wait, if it's rules-based instead of file-based, because the hotel industry still, because the LPM, everything's file-based, so it's rate loading season or load this stuff up. Right. If you can eliminate that loading, then you can do it. And Lauren isn't on. I bet Travel Tripper could be someone, and Pegasus might be able to get into that area, because they were more rules-based, and instead of having a trip tease or something that showed the competitive rates and everything, they just said, this is it, because they could dynamically lower the rate to what the right price is and go and get it booked. That seems to be the future.
Of course, what you're all describing, though, and first of all, I agree with you, but what we're all describing here is yet another example of the hospitality industry turning to an intermediary to be the ones to supply the solution.
Yep.
Right. With free Gmail template.
Ooh. A free Gmail template.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Google is listening.
Google, obviously,
they're offering their solution. Free Gmail.
Yeah, obviously, the voice to text conversion process of Google. Somebody's using Chrome, obviously, that Google figured that out and then provided a voice response solution. So there you go.
Well, we are coming up on the top of the hour, folks.
Ooh.
We are. Yeah. So. Does this mean Tim? Actually, can I just say one more thing on Google? The thing that's very scary is between Richard Holden and Oliver Heckman. They have got A-tier talent working on travel. Right? These are guys who could work on a lot. I think Richard's email. It's just like Richard at Google.com or something like that, right? He's been around that long. He's a kind of top tier product manager, and Oliver Heckman's the guy who figured out that wrote the code for digital rights management of going, that song sounds familiar. I've seen that movie before somewhere. I mean, these are really, really smart folks. And what are they working on? They're working on travel. The same as, what's his name? Is it Greg Greeley, who is at the father of Amazon Prime, right? He's at Airbnb sort of thing. So there's talent. And I think Marriott just hired a new CIO, not from the travel industry. I think, where was he before? Nike, Coca-Cola, somewhere else. The industry is starting to get some top tier talent and put in, which is good, right? So hopefully that will happen. But right now, the Airbnbs and the Googles seem to be outgunning the talent for the hotel industry. So that's got to get addressed.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey guys, apologies. I have to check out now. So it was nice joining you for a little bit. If I find a quiet place in a Starbucks somewhere, I'll try to dial back in.
There's not an easy way to talk to your Google or to a voice control unit in the phone. Say, I just need 30 more minutes, and it goes, that's fine, Dan. That's no charge because you're a frequent guest of ours, and no, can't do that. Huh?
I'm following your Hotwire advice, so and they're treating me, as Lily said, not as nice as they might.
So wait, Dan, you now are booking hotels by trying to find the way that you can pay the least to people in the hotel industry, Dan? Don't follow Robert's advice on this.
And it comes out of my own pocket. Yes, I am.
That's right.
I have been independent for 9 years, and I support the hospitality industry. Is all I'm going to say.
Okay. I'm really tempted to hit this big, really flashing stop button.
Don't touch anything that's red.
I will just close my browser now.
There you go. That'll work.
Yep.
So Dan, if people want to learn more about you, and where can they find you?
Oh, thank you for that. So you can learn more about me on my website, which is sassato.com, SASSATO.com. Thank you very much. Okay. Have a great day, guys.
Sponsor of the Tightrope Walker between the hotels, I believe, in Honolulu, right? Wasn't Sassato the title sponsor of that event? Oh.
Only if he fell. Then we would have taken the sponsor. All right. Take care, all.
Take care, Dad.
Thanks.
And yeah, I'm going to have to bail as well. It's always lovely to see you all. Lily commented before that it's been like a once a month event to start the year. I've had a crazy travel schedule. I will not be here next week again, but I will be back, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in a row after that. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, for now.
Till if a client needs me, Lily, and team, you all know this. If a client needs me, I will be there for them. So
of course.
Now, see,
you must like the Golden Girls in that way. Who was it? I'll be there for you. Who was it? Oh, that's Friends. Never mind. Much like the Friends. Yeah.
Stuart, you're the first person who I think is
the Rembrandts,
Friends
by the way,
and Golden Girls.
Well,
I heard somebody confuse those shows before.
Honestly, before I moved to America, those are the two shows that gave me the experience of America, and I wasn't sure whether it would really live up to it. But yeah, I mean, the fact that I live with 3 elderly women and then go to a coffee shop with a bunch of 20-year-olds every day.
Yeah. You have an 1,800 square foot apartment in Manhattan that costs about $500 a month. Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah. The other show I watched a lot was Jerry Springer and The Simpsons. So between Friends, Golden Girls, Jerry Springer, and The Simpsons, I really got a true taste of what America was going to be like.
Yep.
Actually, on average, that's about right.
Yeah, it just kind of melted all together. So, Tim, if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
You can find me at timpeter.com.
Where you'll also find all the knowledge of the internet right there with pithy sayings.
We're getting ready to do an episode of the podcast with Tim on it, and we're going to break down some of his pithy sayings and talk about what implications they have for hospitality folks. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
And Tim, you even got a shout out in the chat. Just making you see that before you head out.
I saw that from my good friend Louis Boucher, the wonderful sleep shot Louis. Louis, who is in España these days, if I recall correctly, and his lovely family. Louis,
Barcelona, or where is he in Barcelona?
I think he's in Barcelona. I think that's right. But Louis is one of the great guys in the industry. If you don't know Louis, you should, and if you don't know Louis, you will, because he is about the most fun person you can hang out with.
And if you don't know what Sleep Shot is, please go to Sleep Shot on Facebook.
For sure. Oh, Louis said, "Stop it." See, I'm embarrassing him now.
Oh well,
Monsieur Boucher. Au revoir, mon frère. Mon français is mais
Très mal.
merde. But great seeing y'all. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great show next week, and talk to you soon.
See you, Tim.
Bye now.
All right, shall we fit in the boop and the rut-row before we wrap up today?
I suppose, yeah. So the boop. I know having the design hotels that would normally fit in, but the price of wine is dropping fast.
Yeah.
People need we need people to know this. This is important information. So.
And it's only a boop because we're on the hospitality marketing show, and if we were on the wine marketing show, this would be the rut-row.
Exactly. Actually, very, very good point. Yes. So there are too many grapes, and actually two things. One is there are too many grapes, and all these things. The white claw, the white clawing of the beverage industry is certainly an interesting development, which is taking a lot of market share now from wine. So
yeah,
it's really surprising to me that there are too many grapes, given all of the California wildfires.
That's what I thought as well.
Destroying vines and wineries and all of that. Imagine if that hadn't happened, then we'd really be oversupplied and we'd be serving it at every dinner. But anyway.
So and they said wine consumption dropped for the first time in 25 years, and they're turning to liquor. Is that a function of the political? Now that Tim's gone, we can talk politics again. To be honest, I think political environment, or I don't know what.
Wine may have a marketing problem with younger generations. It's just not talked about as much. Whenever you think of wine, you immediately think of moms, I feel like, or corporate events. One of those two things. There's not a lot of young people out there with wine. Cocktails have really had a huge sort of renaissance where they're bringing in all of these natural ingredients and they can make them fresh and things like that. And so, honestly, when I travel, I'm also more inclined to buy a cocktail. Although at home, I would be more inclined to do beer or wine, just because, frankly, I'm too lazy to make a cocktail at home.
Now, see. Stuart travels with an IV bag of Everclear, and that's really kind of the most efficient method he's discovered. So, and he
actually, to clarify, it's absinthe is what I use.
Absinthe, right? Well, yeah. Don't you have one of those little backpacks where you you can put it in there and just hook up the IV, and it's great. So, so Stephanie, do you agree with Lily's assessment that wine is more of a mom thing than a?
I mean, I think there's definitely an association with the moms equal wine drinking for sure. Right. But I also agree with Lily's assessment too on, like if I'm going out, I'm going to treat myself to a fancy cocktail that I'm probably not going to drink at home. I feel like we're big winos at home, like, like being part of all these different wine groups and getting cases of wine. And so I feel like, but in terms of demographics, in terms of like, does my sister who's 8 years younger than me drink wine? Never. Absolutely never. So, but I feel like I have a narrow view of what the alcohol world looks like versus my bartending days when I was, 25 and I used to make sockfuls of money. I didn't sell much wine back then either.
It's interesting. I think my daughters who are 7 years apart, I think the same thing, that the older daughter drinks wine. Now, again, she's 29, right? And the younger one's 22. But I think it's the same case. So.
Yeah, because you think you've got craft beer now. You've got craft cocktails.
Oh, actually, craft beer. Yeah, they go for beer quite. The older daughter's maybe more beer than the younger daughter, I think.
Yeah,
also
within my circle of friends, I think a lot of folks have shifted. Because it used to be if you wanted flavor, you were going more for wine, right? It's more robust punch and probably a little stronger too, right? But than a Michelob Ultra or whatever people used to drink. But now folks are going for craft beer because they have more flavor and they're stronger. So
I think it also depends on geographically where you live.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. Like when I was in Colorado, obviously we drink beer. That was what the thing was. But when I moved to Florida, they had no, at least where I was in Naples, there was no craft beer scene at all. There's like one within a 30-mile radius. So by default, you drink wine because there is no beer. So,
but now you're in Seattle, right?
Yes.
So Rainier Beer still around?
It sure is.
It is.
I was literally out shoveling snow last year, and this guy walked by and was like, "You're doing a great job. Here's your Rainier Beer." And I was like, "Sweet."
Rainier Beer had some of the best advertising. I don't know if they still do, but they were outstanding at their, of just, not taking themselves seriously, providing just really amazing.
No, I mean, I see it as more like the keystone of the Pacific Northwest. But
yeah. What about Olympia? Does Olympia still exist?
It does. But Washington has their own wine country. On the other side, and it's not the caliber of California by any means, but it's still. I mean, it holds its own. It's
Chateau Saint Michelle has made some very good. They went really big when they were a little winery, though. They were doing great stuff. But it was funny because you talk about Colorado. In Colorado, everybody wanted like Olympia beer, and in Washington State, everybody wanted Coors, and they're both just like loathed on each of those.
I'm super confused by your core statement here, and I mean, I feel like that would be anti all things Pacific Northwest. Even consider drinking a Coors here, but maybe
it used to be because you couldn't get it, right? It was all what you couldn't get access to.
What you
I feel like Colorado was all Fat Tire when I lived there. That's what everybody.
That was the first one, but they're kind of. I wouldn't even consider them craft anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
We've moved on past that. But I remember living on the East Coast, and then I moved to Texas, and I couldn't get a Yingling, and that was like the only beer that I wanted was Yingling sometimes, just for like the nostalgia of it.
It's a solid lager for sure. It's from the country's oldest brewery too.
Yeah.
I just got back from Stowe, Vermont. I was on a trip there this week and brought back some Alchemist beers. I brought back some Heady Topper and some other stuff from that brewery, and you would have thought it was Christmas in our office. I don't know if you've ever tried Heady Topper. It's a really hoppy double IPA. It won Beer of the Year a few years ago, but I think it's like 9%. It's a very, very good beer for sure.
Stuart measures the quality of his beer by alcohol content, but that's
no. I mean, flavor is more important for sure.
Exactly.
We're actually going to be drinking it on the podcast today that we record, so we're going to be probably by the end we'll be slurring a little bit, but it'll be fun. So.
Well, that'll be good for the podcast. You'll only be slurring a little bit. Excellent. So
we usually drop by the time we start, so this time we'll wait.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so shall we cover the rut row? And people may not know why this is a rut row, but the title Airbnb rental arbitrage in 2020: where to make money without buying property. This is the undermining of cities, basically, in affordable housing. This is like the worst possible scenario, where basically they're saying, "Hey, here's a great idea. You can rent something on get an annual lease at whatever, and take a unit of affordable housing off the market and rent it on a nightly basis and make a bunch of money in the process."
If I was an owner, I would be revising my contract so that.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Most people can't sublet, right?
There's no way that they can allow me to do
this. It's hard.
Yeah, you're not allowed to sublet in most cases. I think a lot of people will be doing this under the table.
Well, I mean, that does make sense because, again, there was my lovely little Airbnb in Chinatown that I stayed in recently in New York City that had the sign up, no Airbnb allowed. But yet we were somehow there.
Mm-hmm.
Your neighbors catch on really quick. So if you think you're going to, I feel like you could only get away with that for a certain amount of time. Your neighbors are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, two white women going up the stairs of an apartment directly above a Chinese, Peking duck restaurant in New York City. I feel like we stood out just a tad.
Yeah. So but again, this is on a larger sort of scale. This is a tough thing for a lot of places, especially if you get into complexes where people don't know their neighbors and things like that. Which is a lot of apartment buildings where, I don't know, it's just kind of people going in and out, larger building. And how you keep track of that is a tough situation.
It is, but municipalities have to get their arms around this because it is destroying ecosystems. And if you look at New Orleans now, and I know folks that live down there, the that cannot find any affordable accommodations anywhere near the center of the city.
Right.
And so they're having to commute much further, and it's making them question whether to even continue. And these are folks that are doing, the service industry type jobs. This is really going to add pressure to hotels who are already finding it hard to find enough, maintenance crew and housekeeping folks and front desk reservations. People aren't going to be able to afford to work in your city.
Yeah. Aspen, I think you mentioned it.
Seattle, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all these places which are really great, and it undermines. You wind up doing that. There aren't people who are going to the dry cleaners or the whatever the local corner stores and things like that, which support these neighborhoods. That's tough. You
need to do something about it. Right? Become vocal. Become an advocate for housing. Get a group of people together to lobby your local city, county councils to make this a top priority agenda item next year or two. But this has to.
It's already a big topic here in Seattle. Good luck getting in that gust of wind that's happening. I mean, there's a lot of vocal people here.
Right? There's also a lot of lobbying on the other side, which is the challenge.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, and the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Sorry, guys, they're on the wrong side of this argument. The poor hoteliers are hurting. It's like no, go over. And I'll pull a Tim Peter. Yeah, 2015. Right, I was all over this topic, and that's the only way to fix it. You just focus on the affordable housing side and you win. But the industry won't, it refuses to, because it's a little bit harder. You really have to go city by city. You can't make these blanket platitudes about, they aren't paying their taxes. Well, guess what? Airbnb's paying their taxes, generally speaking. But boy, where they're putting all their lobbying, their effort is to fight these things which essentially eradicate a huge proportion of their revenue stream, right? And so that's, it's not kill them, it's just regulate them so it makes sense.
Limit
support the city, kill the city.
Limit them by going after inventory. Like that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. Yep. And that takes organization, and it takes, diligence, all the things we were talking about earlier about how you focus and make things. What was Tim saying? The focus will make action, or whatever it is. So.
It was not saying.
Oh, you're saying. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was all Tim saying. That's right. Oh, geez. So.
Where focus goes, energy flows. That was the saying.
Yeah. And that's what that would. And see, we need Kat on here so she can have a HOA pivot and just really take the mantle of this. So anyway, we'll have to lobby Kat to go do the right thing on it. So hey, I am not opposed to finishing the show within a 2-hour window. I think that is a noble pursuit to try to work this thing down to 90 minutes.
I think it is. I might have gotten some additional feedback at HSMAI that, short and succinct might be better sometimes.
Well, you're watching
the wrong show. That is not our brand.
Yeah. We have too many opinions on the show for us.
True.
Unless we did one topic an episode, then maybe we'd keep it down to 60 minutes. But even
somebody's
then, I think
going to have to make me lose my voice again for that to be.
And Stuart, you realize if we did propose one topic, nobody would discuss it. It would be a completely different topic that would be discussed for the hour, which is kind of the thing. As case in point today, the top story that I picked was the end of shopping's boundaries, omnichannel personalization, which I thought had some really interesting stuff from McKinsey on what's going on, kind of the tools you needed for that. But that's fine. Anyway, so all of you, I'm not sure. I can go in the order on my screen, which I'm not sure is probably different for everyone. But I see Stephanie in kind of the prime upper left position. If people want to find you, where can they find out about Cogwheel?
Yeah, hit me up at cogwheelmarketing.com or LinkedIn, Stephanie Sparks Smith.
Very good. Stuart?
You can find me at fueltravel.com. We're going to be actually doing a podcast episode on a lot of what we talked about today related to Google and the threat that they are posing to our industry. So And that's going to be based on I'm doing a presentation week after next at Navigate conference on the same topic as well. So I'm very vocal. I hope it doesn't backfire. I hope I don't get dinged by Google somehow. But I'm talking a lot about how Google's going to kill us all. And the crown jewel of that was when I presented on that topic to the HSMA Advisory Council, and then realized literally a minute beforehand that someone from Google was actually on the call when I presented.
Are you going to talk about cookies and all that as well?
We're probably not going to get into the cookie thing. I think that's probably another episode we're going to touch on that, because I think that's probably getting blown a little out of proportion. People saying it's the death of marketing and stuff like that. I don't really think it is, for folks that are doing things the right way. But we are going to be talking about, and Google aren't the first to kind of go that direction. Apple's been very restrictive on third-party cookies for some time. So,
yeah.
But no, we're going to be talking more about Google and the changes they've made incrementally over the last 5 years and where it's heading to, and what you can do about it as an individual hotel owner. Because there are still things that we have advantages over Google, because we actually get to host the guest, right? And we get to have a relationship with the guest. So we still have some advantages. So yeah, listen to the Fuel podcast. Anyway, you listen to podcasts, you'll hear about that. Or if you're at Navigate in San Antonio, March 2nd through 4th, I'll be presenting on that topic too.
I'm just impressed Stuart is preparing a presentation earlier than the night before. Wow, who knew? So
they demanded the slides 2 weeks before the actual event.
Oh, that's smart
organization, because people.
First time I've ever done it. But I've already there's already 3 things I want to interject I submitted it last week, and there's already 3 things I want to submit into the.
Well, yeah, but you can work with them on it and just say, hey, more
stuff in. Like Hilton partnering with BuzzFeed is a big thing, because one of the strategies that the flags are taking is how do I create more direct channels to the consumer, more touch points, right? Yep. And so this partnership with BuzzFeed is evidence of that. So, yeah, we'll probably slide in a few more slides between now and the
See, another article we didn't really discuss, and Hilton getting the deal for Resorts World in Las Vegas, which is a massive casino development, which will take Hilton back to. Actually, Las Vegas used to generate 1/3 of Hilton's corporate profit, I believe that was through the 80s or something. The Flamingo Hilton and the Las Vegas Hilton, which was just absolutely insane how they supported that organization for decades. But see, and that's, I think, all the fans who write to us and say they wish the show was 3 hours or 4 hours so we can cover all the news topic. We're sorry. We're going to try to get down to 90 minutes. As you can see, the sign off is now taking close to 5 or 10 minutes. So, Lily, where can people find?
Speaking of Robert, where can they find you?
Oh, well, I was going to let Lily go for bets.
Go ahead, Robert. We're going in order.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, we're in the same order. See, I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I think it's when somebody clicks into their audio and video. It goes in that order chronologically.
At least we're starting to understand perhaps how the platform works. That's always good.
Because that came on after Robert. So did you leave and come back? Robert?
I did. Yeah, I had a problem where it dropped out and had to come back.
I thought this is holds. All right, cool.
Yeah, but anyway, Robert K. Cole on social media or rockcheetah.com. Or if you would like to get the newsletter, which has all of these fun topics that we discuss, all you have to go is to bit.ly rockcheetah, which is bit.ly or bit.ly. Sorry, I always forget that dot. bit.ly /rockcheetah, all lowercase, ROCKCHEETAH, and you can get these. And it seems that people were 45% open rate, which is good. It's climbing, and it's actually, I think, just over 40% and about 45% click-through rate. So people seem to be engaging with the content, which is good. So
excellent.
And Lily, where can people find out about?
Well, I have to follow up with Lauren, because I would normally say we like to simulcast this show on our Facebook page, but it looks like something happened today and it did not go live on our Facebook page. But normally you can find us simulcasting this on our Facebook page for ThinkUp Enterprises, but also you can go directly to our website at thinkupenterprises.com, where we do all things revenue, sales, and marketing convergence, profitability, and revenue management consulting, and also at tcrmservices.com, where we focus on excellence in day-to-day revenue management services.
Excellent. Well, and we thank you.
Positioning statement.
Thank you.
And Lauren
uses
isn't
Bill
here.
and Ted as their spokespeople.
And Lauren isn't here, who would describe all the different. I'm not sure if he describes them as simulcasts, because they aren't. But the posting of this video into the Asia Pacific time zones, European time zones, across all sorts of other platforms. No one really knows how that works, so I'm not going to try to describe it. But
I've always wondered why he says that at the end of this, though. Too.
I have no idea.
Already listened to it in North America.
Someone who's listened to it who's hung in for.
If you want to waste another 2 hours of your life and wake up in the middle of the night, then go watch it on Asian time.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but hey, see you folks next week. I believe I will be here. Tim won't, it sounds like, but hopefully we'll have you folks. And I don't know, Ed has been rather absentee.
I get to see Ed next week. He's coming to Myrtle Beach. So
he is.
I'll share a craft beer with him.
We'll give him a hard time, because we have failed in our normal thing, which is to make up really horrible stories about why people miss hosting the show. But anyway, I think he's still having problems with that rash, right?
That's what I heard.
I believe.
Thank goodness I'm going to be here next week, so you don't have to make up stories about me.
That's good. See, fear is a tremendous motivator. Anyway, okay, folks. I think I will wind up hitting the stop button on the recording now, and we'll see what happens, because again, Lauren knows how all this stuff works, so we'll either have a very aggressive cutoff here or not. But we can also tell Lauren at under a minute and 56 or an hour and 56 minutes we did it. So
we can talk for another 4 minutes.
But if we start a topic, we're going to talk for another 24 minutes instead of 4 minutes. Right?
I did want to point out Lauren's joke when he left and it stayed on. He said the Schrodinger cat lived, which I thought was a really funny joke.
But actually, he didn't say Schrodinger. It's the Schroeder cat live. So I'm
not
sure. Is that the Schroeder's cat? I'm not sure.
What we don't know is if there's now a parallel universe where it didn't work. So,
well, in Schroeder, he must be referring to the pianist from Peanuts comic strips, right? So, Lauren always very multi-layered. The level of comedy and the craft.
Yeah, that's way too deep for me. I didn't get those layers.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, yes, looks like Schroeder's cat lived. Great deal. Anyway. Okay, well, on that note, we'll say goodbye and see everyone next week.
See ya.
On the Hospitality Marketing Live Show. Till next week. Bye.
Nothing's happening.
What happened?
Okay.
I think we're still.
It's still recording, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
No.